Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Georginas. I am the Marketing Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I'm going to be your monitor today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know we will allow time at the end of the webinar for Q&A, so please write in your questions on in the question area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our site. For those of you who are not familiar with DSL, sorry, DCL, we are a data conversion laboratory, and we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for today's and tomorrow's technology. Data Conversion Laboratory services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs today and in the future. We serve a broad client base spanning all industries. This morning I am very happy to introduce Naz Urbina, Content Strategy Practice Owner at Mekon. He has 20 years in content-driven business processes. He also runs a technology-independent consultancy, which provides tool selection support and training and systems integration. In addition to all that, he is the Concility Events Chairperson this year and author of Content Strategy, Connecting the Dots Between Business, Brand, and Benefits. So without much further ado, I will turn it over to you, Naz, okay?
Hi there. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay, Georgina?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. Hi. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming. So Georgina's already given me quite a gracious little intro. I'm going to show you the agenda for today. So we're doing some introductions now. You've heard about a little bit about DCL. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about this session. I'm going to skip through most of my introduction and Mekon, as Georgina's already handled that. Then we're going to get into what is a management system versus a database and in general, why we need them. And then we're going to do an overview of the three common types of management system that I, as a consultant, am encountering in the field and have been encountering in the field for the past decade or so. Then we're going to look at how these systems and whether these systems should be unified and how they work together and how they don't, and then wrap up, which we'll hopefully have a good Q&A after that. So I'm just going to zip quickly through back to here. So this session, One Management System to Rule Them All, is about differentiation. We're going to be comparing apples to oranges and bananas. This is a comparative overview, so I'm not going to be giving a master class in any one type of management system today. We're going to look at what their characteristics are, where they sit in enterprise architecture, and what they're good at, what they're not good at. The types we're looking at are CCMS, which is going to be represented throughout this slideshow by apples over there. DMS, Document Management System, which is going to be our bananas, and WebCMS, or WCMS, which is going to be oranges. So you can watch those fruits throughout. So there's me. I'll put that up because although Georgina introduced me, many of you may have never seen me before. I think that you've heard some of this from Georgina, but that's Mekon over there, and as she said, we're a technology-independent consultancy. I do want to formally invite everyone over to Concility this year. In June in the UK, we'll be running the Content Agility and S1000D events, two co-located events at the same place. in London, in the UK, and that's in late June. You can check that out on the website or at congility.com if you're a major Twitter person. And that's just a picture of my book, which is launched, which is available now on Amazon.com and other major booksellers. I have to mention my co-author, Rahel Ann Bailey, who wrote the book with me, and you can learn more about her on the site. So I'm based in Spain, in the south of Spain, for those of you who don't know me, so I spend a lot of my time doing this. And when I'm not doing this, I'm working with companies like these. I work mainly in the big bad projects, microprocessors, medical devices, telecommunications. They tend to gravitate towards Mekon because our specialism is complex document processes. So our experience is looking at some of the more complicated problems in the world and then kind of bringing that knowledge back to the mass market and working with those organizations who are still trying to adopt best practices in these areas. So we're here today to talk about management systems. And I just want to do a quick contextual thing of what a management system exactly is. This list is from actually from Wikipedia. You can look it up yourself. But it's oh, sorry, I'm getting some complaints of echo. Not sure why that is. Let me just try something here. Is it still happening? I got something coming in with raising their hand saying it's hard to hear me. Is that any better? Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what the cause of that was. Okay, so we're just going to continue now. So this is kind of a generic list defining what a management system is exactly. It provides your storage for content. It allows you to label that content with metadata labels. It is your point of integration so that you have the ability to hand off content from one part of the organization to another or integrate with partners and third-party systems or between different applications. Capture is something that I think is under considered when you look at a management system. How do you get stuff in there? Do you write it into forms? Do you author it in a third-party application like Word, InDesign, FrameMaker? How do you index it once it's in there so that you can retrieve it and distribute it? As well as security, workflow, collaboration, everyday things that organizations are looking for. Your versioning, your ability to create versions as you work, roll back to different versions, and in some scenarios do what's called branching of versions and merging of versions is very important in a management system, as well as the ubiquitous and all-important search and publishing. So that's what they kind of offer. And I want to make clear something right off the bat, something that often comes up that's confusing, is that a management system is not a database. So you have systems like Oracle, MySQL, or even something simple like Access, Microsoft Access. Those are databases. The management system is something that sits on top of a database, basically a special kind of application. It sits on top of a database, or more generically, a repository. So the application, the management system itself, is where you have the specific behaviors, specific user interfaces, and the features of the particular management system you're talking about. That's where you do your integration and your interactions. So that's what the API layer is. Application Programming Interface is the way that two computer systems interact with each other or interface with each other, and then the user interfaces like the screens, buttons, and all that, that's how a person interfaces with the system. And that sits on top of the repository layer, which is just where stuff lives. It's simple storage, but it also handles transaction management and failover and robustness. So if you've got a huge server farm, with hundreds of actual computers storing the content, the repository is often the thing that's handling your backups, your scheduling of your backups, robustness and rollover if something goes wrong. So the two work in tandem and work very closely with each other. Some management systems are tied to one particular repository, and then some management systems can actually work on top of several repositories, and they give you the choice between, let's say, Oracle and MySQL, or SQL Server. So that's the systems. The thing that people are coming to me and coming to their need to implement an MS, the reasons that they want one are things like content agility. It's the ability to get the right content to the right platform, the right format. If you're coming to this webinar, you've probably heard that string of rights several times. It's the ability to, in our modern day publishing world, where we have a plethora of different devices, different device profiles and sizes, as well as a deep need for personalization of content, where people want no more or no less than what they're after, and they want it catered to their interests and available in print if they want it in print, on their phone if they want it on their phone, and so on. Efficiency, simple speed and efficiency, the ability to automate how they publish, because there are many manual tasks, many organizations where people are copying and pasting stuff onto websites. They are routing print documents around to review them. They are manually uploading files from one system to another, and so on. And if they are working in multiple formats and want to publish out to HTML and print, then that single sourcing process can be very manual, where they're manually maintaining two different copies. Collaboration is also essential in modern business, where you've got many people involved on authoring a particular document or deliverable. So you have specialists who are good at one particular section. They're good at tutorials. They're good at answering conceptual information. They're good at managing reference tables. You have different people who come into a deliverable and they maintain their bit, but they've all got to collaborate so that the deliverable gets delivered at the right time, so the document gets out the door. My personal favorite, and I think the one that's underserviced both by the management system vendors and underestimated by the management system buyers, is metrics, control, and measurement. It's very important in modern publishing to get publishing analytics. Who is using the content? When are they using it? What part of the world are they in? What were they doing when they started using it? This type of information allows a business which is already very, very stressed by how much it needs to publish and how many different audiences it needs to satisfy to make smart decisions. Publishing analytics let you decide what content that you publish is worth your time. I've been in many organizations that are publishing information because they have it. Not because the customer needs it, but because it's there. And so they're shoving it out there, and that's bad for the customer because they don't have to sift. They have to sift through extra stuff they don't want. And it's terrible for business because they're spending money creating, formatting, translating, and improving content that nobody was actually looking at. Workflow and auditability. If you have a large, complex content set and you want to anticipate problems and you want to know when things are going to get done, what state they're at, then you need to be able to say what's in draft, what's 70% done, what hasn't been started. And if you're in a situation where you have to provide an audit trail of what happened to content, then the management system can tell you who did what to what piece of content, when, and so on. That's important for regulatory and procedural compliance. And then there's simple security, providing secure access so that only the right people get the right content at the right time. Naturally, all MS vendors will tell you that their particular management system is great for all of these things. However, the truth is there's different systems with different specialisms. I'm sure that many of you will have heard of or will have questions about some of these other types of management systems, so learning management, translation management, and so on. I'm afraid I'm only going to have time to cover those three that I mentioned, but in the Q&A, I'm happy to take questions about the others and take them all into offline discussions if you want. So this is a diagram that I use to illustrate to my clients the differences between the common MS types. So I've got, from left to right, I've got internal access, or I've got staff on the internet, or the local area network. And then I've got external access on the other side of this blue line, where clients, partners, and the rest of the world are accessing the system in some way. And there's a back and forth between these. So starting over here on the top right, DMS, that's where you have things like SharePoint, Documentum. The DMS is a document management system. It manages whole formatted documents. The web content management system, things like Drupal, Alfresco, WordPress, handles websites, web pages, and as you know, media files like video and PDFs for download. The CCMS is the one that's probably least understood, and it's the up-and-comer. There are less types of CCMS out there right now. There's less implementations, but the people who need them really need them, and are really happy to have them. So those are systems like ACSoft, TriSoft, which has just been renamed to Live Content Architect, systems like XDocs and Passant, and they focus on source materials, building blocks that are ready for reuse in any document, any format, any output. I'm going to go into depth in these in a little while, and you can see what the real differences are. But basically, the DMS and the CMS are things that handle publishing and storage, whereas the CMS helps you with writing. It helps you avoid copying and pasting between websites, copying and pasting between different reports, different documents, different manuals. It helps you with reuse wherever the content is going to end up, be that different documents, different formats, different outputs, different platforms, etc. So now that we've kind of touched on the main types we'll be looking at, we can do our first lightning poll. So Georgina, I'm relying on you to get that poll out there so people can answer it. So we're just getting those poll answers in, and we'll close it up and we can share the results. Okay, Georgina, I think we can close the poll up now. Okay. Okay, so most of you voted. So none of the above is actually the majority. That's interesting. But 22% are using all three types already. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. That's higher than I expected. So we've got most people are using either all three, just a DMS, or a DMS and a WebCMS, but not a CCMS, that's basically what I expected. As I said, the most common ones are definitely WebCMS and DMS, and people are moving now more and more to adopting CCMS to back these systems up. One person pointed out that we didn't put on the poll just CCMS by itself. which was kind of on the assumption that just about every organization has got a WebCMS or a DMS at least before they have CCMS. Maybe that was remiss of us, but if there were lots of you who wanted to put only CCMS and don't have either of the other two in your organization, then that's quite interesting for me to learn. Okay, so moving right along. The main differentiation between these, if you're talking about yourself, if you're trying to learn about them, or if you're trying to explain them to other people, is two real areas. The first is manageable units. The document management system, the thing that you can manage, the thing that the system is designed for and understands, is a document. So when you have objects in the repository, they are always document objects. A CCMS or a WebCMS handles smaller pieces of information that can be pulled together. So they can handle different types of what we call component. Fragment and variable are types of components, but they're smaller than a component. And you can use variables to build up fragments, to build up components, and then use components to build up your final deliverables. The next major difference is how they handle structure and metadata. In the DMS and the WebCMS, the content is often unstructured. So you are responsible for operating within your company's business rules. If there's rules like your titles must be followed by a short description, then you have to be responsible for putting it in there. If your titles have to have a subtitle after them, then it's your responsibility to make sure it's there. And in an unstructured world, you can have 3 titles in a row with nothing in between them if you want. In the WebCMS, there's often structure, but it's driven by the user interface. So it's in the actual WebCMS itself that the definition of what you can do is made. So if you have a CMS that says you can have 2 titles, you can have 2 titles. If your CMS says you can't have 2 titles, then you can't. And it's completely tied to the software. In the CCMS, the source itself, the actual content that you write, is structured. So the CCMS has structure that can survive across platforms because the documents that you write have metadata and structure built into them. So if you pass them on to an automatic publishing system or to another organization, that structure survives across that communication with content. So that's a big, big difference. And the reason that CCMSs are becoming the go-to starting system for an automated publishing channel. Because you can write your content and know that your structures are good and know that your structures will survive in your content throughout all the downstream processes. So I'm going to get into a little bit of depth on each of the 3 systems now. Georgina and Vincent, do you think this is a good time for our second poll? Georgina and Vincent? I can't hear you guys. I'm just going to keep going because I think we're having some technical difficulties. Can everybody else hear me? Or can everyone else give me a ping if you can't hear me? Otherwise, yeah, I'm just going to keep. You can hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah, and the poll is up.
Oh, the poll is up. Okay. I can't actually see when it comes up, so give me a shout.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, I can see the votes coming in. Okay, so just about everybody's voted. Keep it open a little bit more, and there. Okay, so we closed up the poll yet. So, of those of you looking to break down silos, we've got quite a majority who are looking to actually use their management system as a tool to start crossing silos. That's excellent. So as we get into the systems overviews, and especially into the final section, I think that's going to be very relevant for a lot of you. 28% of you not sure yet, but very few of you are actually not looking at silos and silo busting. So that's encouraging for me, because I think silos are a major barrier today. Okay, we're going to take a deeper look at DMS. Document Management System, also known as Electronic Document Management System, which is the same thing basically. That handles two types of documents. I'm teaching you some kind of a DMS vocabulary, if you might be speaking to other people in your organization who are using them. There's live documents, which are things that you work on a day-to-day basis. And then there's static documents, things that are put in the DMS that just stay there until there's some circumstance or some schedule requires an update. This basic distinction makes them very good for archives, your reference library, your authoritative copies of things. They're often used for organization-wide document control. So document numbering. Some organizations have approved document numbers. Every document must have a number for regulatory reasons and auditability reasons. And it's the DMS, which is the authorized system of reference for issuing those numbers. And no other system is allowed to make up document numbers. It's also often the system that the companies first get approved for formal release. So again, extremely important in any regulated industry, but in any business that has very rigorous process controls and governance, the DMS is the go-to system, allowing things to be signed off, often with digital signatures, allowing people to move a document forward. They're usually internal, but they're often used to deliver to secure extranet, and sometimes the things get signed off in the DMS and then go over to the WebCMS to get published to the outside world. The DMS and the WebCMS, if you see them in one package, they're called an enterprise CMS, or enterprise content management system. There are many in the world. I've got a bit.ly link for you from the New York Archives, NYS DMs. That link has a list of many of the popular DMSs that's been reasonably recently updated. There are open source and commercial options available, ranging from, as I said, open source and free, and it's all up to you, to many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for an average implementation. So the document management system is very good at traditional document flows. So your finance stuff, supplier and contract management, audit and compliance, as I mentioned, and then things like benefits administration, performance reviews. Anywhere you want to push paper around in a controlled way, in a digital way, then the DMS is very good for that. It's very bad at granular things like requirements management, for example, where you're going to manage a requirement from the initial requirements document out to various technical specifications, then on to various technical documents and marketing documents. Handling that granular reuse and fine-grained publishing from document to document out eventually to the outside world, the document management system is hopeless at that because it has no idea what's happening inside the document. It only knows the top-level report or spec or manual. And I've actually had many people abusing their DMS to a point where it just becomes ridiculous. And I've had multiple clients tell me that their DMS is the place that documents go to die. And if you want to make sure that a document is never seen again, the fastest way to do that is just upload it into the official document library, and no one will ever find it again. Because they're can often be cheap and they handle the traditional flows, they get implemented very widely, not very rigorously, and the fact that they're not good at handling any kind of reuse or the complex things that people think that people want to do with their content today means that they just become often shelfware or neglected, except for some core tasks like a formal release or review. So not very good for technical documentation where you have many manuals for different user types and many manuals and products which are highly interrelated. Any sort of structural control of what you're doing, the DMS is hopeless at, and really cannot be made to do it because that's not what they're for. They manage at the file level. So if you want to do quality control and structural control with how you write and what you write within a document, that you want to be looking at something else. So particularly XML or VIDA or formats like that, DMS is usually not good for it. I have some screenshots here. DMSs are good for sharing stuff out if properly implemented. This is an example from SharePoint where you've got the ability to just right-click something and send to an email link, which is nice. So you can, instead of emailing someone a document, email them a link to the document within the DMS, and they can come in, interact with it. They can comment on it. They can download it and do other things with it. This is a web interface. So this is based off Documents on WebTop, where you have a file system essentially, where you can come in and very rigorously control documents. Checksum, for those of you who don't know, is a way of verifying that a document is definitely been unchanged. You compare two checksums, and you're guaranteed that the document is exactly the version that you're after, with no differences whatsoever. So that kind of thing can be very useful, and providing web access to a file system, again, can be very useful in the organization. Again, I've got a SharePoint example here where instead of sending to an email link, they've implemented a publishing route where you can just come in and right-click and then send to the Northwinds Record Center. So they've got some sort of publishing workflow which passes off to a different system. So this is useful if you've got people who are maybe not particularly technically literate or content specialists, and you want to give them a simple way to route documents around the business or outside of the business, then the DMS is very good for that. So that takes us on to web content management systems. I'm just going to pause for any, see if there's any questions that come in. No, I don't see any questions. Okay. So the WebCMS. The WebCMS, the Web Content Management System, is all about websites and web content. So your HTML, HTML5 content. All of you access content from WebCMSs every day, probably multiple times a day, or most of us do. As I said earlier, content structures are handled in a different way in a WebCMS. They're handled usually with a form. So you lay out a web form that says title, and there's a space where you write your title, and then it says description, and there's a place where you write description, and your body, a place where you put your body, and so on. So the content structures are controlled with a form, or they're not controlled at all. So you write your content in Microsoft Word or in just a big block that says body, and you write whatever you want inside. They're extremely pervasive. There are over 1,500 known systems going. I've got a short list for you here. CMS, CR, WCM. That's another bit.ly link. So that's a short list, and it's still a huge list. Again, like DMSs, highly commoditized with big range. You've got open source options like WordPress, Fresco, and then you've got enterprise options like Documentum, SharePoint, and so on, which can run a wide gamut of price points. oh, sorry. For professional CMSs, that wouldn't be Documentum and SharePoint. That would be Alfresco and something like SDL Tridium or OpenCMS. Okay, so I've got an example here. To be able to show you under the hood with a WebCMS, I chose to use the one that we're using for the book that we published. That's the Content Strategy Book website. And in here, you can see that there are places that I can post types of content, and they are particularly typed. So I've got testimonials, slides, portfolios. Testimonials is the one that I want you to take note of, as well as generic posts and media. This is WordPress. WordPress started as a blogging tool, but has developed into quite a capable CMS and is one of the most popular CMSs, web CMSs in the world. It's not used necessarily for huge enterprise projects, but many small and medium-sized businesses are using it. And it's a good example for learning the concepts. Also a good example for learning the challenges. So this is a screenshot from our website, and I've got a bit about the book over here, where we've written the book, and that's a generic post. And I can put it on a page within the navigation system. And then I've got other objects here, which are of the testimonial type from the previous page. So you can reuse testimonials onto a page with other types of generic posts. And you've got three parts of a testimonial. You've got the actual text, where someone says something about the book, then their name, and then their job title. That's the structure of a testimonial. And the way that that looks in the system is, I can actually jump out and show it to you. I post something of the testimonial type. And then I could type what I want into the testimonial body, and then give the metadata that's appropriate. And then that will be computed, and then will show up on the website like so. So the fact that it's a testimonial makes it gray and on the right. And the fact that that's the person's name gives it that formatting, and so on and so on. So there is structure, and they are reusable because I can put them together on this page. However, I wanted to reuse some of this book content here in this unit of content over here on another page with another layout. And I talked to a WordPress expert, and I had to install plugins. I had to define new web forms in the CMS. And if you ever go to web content strategy conferences, they'll talk about this all the time. They want to do something, and they have to get IT involved. They can't change their layout of content. They can't change how they structure content without getting somebody to change the system itself. So that limits reuse a lot. So the web content management system is really good at websites, including responsive design, if you've heard of responsive design for the mobile web, community management, and analytics, because they're often tied to marketing and web publishing. So the marketing department, because they're trying to drive revenue, want to know exactly what's happening with their content. Who's seeing it, when, how many times, how long do they look at it for? All this kind of thing which any publisher should want to know. They should want to know what's happening with their content. But web content management systems are really far and away the leaders in this area of allowing you to see what's going on with your content. Because they're so widely used, the skills are very easy to source. And again, because they're used for all sorts of publishing, they have out-of-the-box integrations with social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and things like that. However, they are not very good at just about everything else. So if you want real professional print, where you're handling running headers and footers, complex cross-referencing, any kind of complex pagination and layout, then the WebCMS really is not very good for that, and it's not very good even if you put in some investment to integrating it, because the underlying repository and management system don't understand the content in the same way that is required for print publishing. As I mentioned, the content structures are tied into the CMS itself. So I've got a testimonial type, and I've got other types of content defined in my system. If I want to arrange things in a different way, I've got to have an IT person come in and change them for me. And if I push them out of the system and I publish them, then all that information is lost. It's not retained, and it's not portable the way it is with XML content. So single sourcing and reuse can often be a real hack, if not totally unfeasible. And I've been working with Fortune 500 organizations, household names who the majority of you will be regular users and customers, and you go in and you look under the covers, and they have people who are copying and pasting between web forms, and the developers are copying and pasting bits of code between web pages so that the actual websites will continue to function. It never ceases to amaze me how unprofessional and labor-intensive web publishing is. If you're in the technical communications world especially, you kind of have this image of marketing and web publishing as this very slick and automated thing. But there they have as many reuse and system troubles as we do. That leads us squarely to CCMS. I've got the most detail on the CCMS because I think it's the one which people I have the least understanding of or struggle the most to explain to people what the difference is. So the CCMS is all about multi-platform, multi-format source material. In the CCMS, information is structured. The content that you write itself has a structure defined in it. So if you want to write a task, the fact that it's got a name for the task and then a series of steps that are in a particular order and then a task result, those are things that are defined in the content, and that definition and type will translate into another system. So if you write one XML task in one system, you can put that into another system and you can import it perfectly because all its metadata and all its structural information is retained inside it. It's designed to help you with the process of compiling deliverables together from smaller reusable components. So what the WebCMS and the VMS were very bad at, the CCMS is very good at, which is supporting this process of bringing very flexibly these little bits together in new combinations for new audiences for new reasons, without having to resort to getting an IT person to build you a new web form or build you a new template so that your content can be shaped the way you want it. They're usually XML-based, more often than not DITA these days, which is far and wide the standard of choice for component content management system. As I mentioned, authors can restructure without IT support. The WebCMS and the DMS, they are born as management systems, but very much as publishing systems as well. So they handle users, logins, access rights, and all this stuff as part of the same system. Whereas the CCMS is very much focused on the creation and source management. They help you write the content in the first place. They help you handle the fact that you've got 8 documents that are 80% similar, but 20% different, and they have to be conditionally published for various audiences, and so on and so on. They're designed for that kind of scenario. So there's less of them. There's not as many CCMSs out on the market today, but in the last couple of years, we've seen lots of newcomers with better usability, with lower price points, and because of the great data uptake, we're seeing more offers come out to the market. I've got a list there. It's a data-only list. You can see that, again, it's a bit.ly link. Data WR, this is the Data Writer blog, CCM, and you can see more systems. Those links, by the way, they are case sensitive, so it has to be lowercase and then capital CCM. So how does the CCMS work? How does it do this different stuff? CCMSs, instead of working with documents, they work with collections of components. So you bring it together a collection of components, often called a map in data terminology. And that map says, these are the components which I'm going to use to build up this deliverable. Those components might also, in turn, point to fragments, which could be variables, very small things like a product name, or insets like a warning, and you want to reuse a whole warning across many different documents because you've had all of your warnings approved by the safety group, and then you want all of them to be shared across all the places that that warning is mentioned. That's a type of component called a fragment, and then from the collection, you can root down to see what components are used and then what fragments are used. Similarly, for images will be referenced by a specific component. But collections of maps can also have submaps. So unlike in the document world where you have a document, or in the web world where you have a web page, and you can maybe pull together various bits to make a web page, here we have the concept of collections, so a complex set of components, and then a sub-collection, which might be reused as its own deliverable on another date. So if you have the reference area of a document, you could publish that out as a reference manual, but you might also want to wrap that up into a complete maintenance and training manual, where what was one reference manual then becomes simply a series of chapters or a chapter in another manual. That's very powerful. If you're coming from FrameMaker, for example, where you've been using FrameMaker books, where you just have this idea of chapter and book, the ability to nest various levels of collection is very, very powerful and useful. The management system allows you to see changes in status of any related files. So if you own the collection, or if you own one of the components, and someone changes one variable or one warning or inset that you've used, you can see that change in status by doing a report on your objects. You can see where everything is, what you're linking to, what is linking to you, and so on. They're very good at managing cross-references. WebCMSs can be better or worse at this, depends on the WebCMS. Document management systems are extremely bad at it, which is managing how two pieces of information link to each other. In a component CMS, because you're managing each little component, the CMS helps you do things across chapters, across sections, even across documents. And with the new standards that are coming out in the last couple of years, you can even manage links to any published location. So if you have a file reference or a web reference, then you can globally update all of your links to that particular place if that document is moved. So they're very good at managing complex relationships within the content. They're also particularly good at managing complex versioning and status. So in a CCMS, you don't just have the document. You can have what we call a composite object representing any piece of the document. So I've got here an author who creates a topic, which is the topic component, and then that will move through its version life. So I'll have version 1, version 1.1, and then at version 2 it turns red because it got approved. Then you get 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and then at 3.0 it got approved again, and then we've got another one there. So that's the version, what we call the version stack of that topic. But you also have the possibility to branch off. And what I've done here is I've overlaid these kind of branches here. So you've got your brown root topic here, and that leads up to your green leaf topics that come off the branches. So if I am working on version 1, or I'm working on version 1.1, and someone else decides that they want to take an instance of that 1.0 topic, and they want to make their own changes in parallel to me, that's called a branch. And so you get a 1.A.1 branch, a 2.A.1 branch, and so on. And you can even have branches of branches, and you get this sort of tree of versions. And the CMS understands that that one topic, whenever I look at that one topic, I want to be able to see everything that's happened in all those other topics. Because somebody working on the second branch of this topic over here may want to see that there's now a 3.0 version, and they want to compare their branch to the main branch and take some action based on that. So you're able to reuse, compare, and edit content from various points in this big compound object, which the CCMS handles for you. It allows you to work in parallel so that separate projects don't disturb each other, which we have many clients where this is extremely important. I need to be able to work on my project and my version of the component, and I don't want to be affected by your changes until my project is closed, and then I'll go look at what you did in parallel, and then we'll see how we'll resolve the differences. They also want to trace back metadata, so they want to be able to see when was a metadata label applied, by who, to what branch, things like that. And they want to be able to do all this complex versioning and status stuff on whole collections. So you can branch a whole collection and say, I'm working on this, this document or this microsite, and then somebody else is working on a branched version of it somewhere else, and then someone else has frozen their work on a particular version up here in the version stack, and they don't want any further updates to come into their work. You also have composite image objects. So CCMS allows you, because you're working for multi-format output, to handle image objects for all format and versions. So if you have a topic with an image in it, when you link to an image, you're not linking to an SVG for the web, for print, or a JPEG for the web. You link to the overall image object. So I'm going to link to this diagram. And if this diagram is originally in Visio, I've got the Visio source file, and then I've also got all the different formats that that Visio source file got rendered into available as one object. So I can see, is there a JPEG available? What status is that JPEG? And I can go through the version history of all my different source files if I need to. When it comes time to publish, the publishing process from the CCMS is responsible for automatically selecting the appropriate image type for my publishing channel. So if I say I want to publish a PDF, it should automatically pick up the SVG format because that's the format appropriate for print publishing. If I'm publishing to the web, it should pick up the low-res JPEG. So this is for scenarios where, for example, a document owner says they want to publish, and they want to see what has happened to every section, every image, every text inset that their document uses. So they want to have complete visibility to all the relationships between components. When I'm out doing interviews with clients, this comes up again and again. They say, when stuff changes, you don't know what's what. And they have a DMS, but things only go into the DMS when they're ready. So I've had clients who, to make a DMS handle component content, they were handling all the component stuff on the file system by hand, and then they would create a zip file at the end of every day in every editing session, and they would upload that entire zip file into the DMS with all the components, all the images, etc. And there was no way to handle the fact that two zip files would sometimes share the same component. So the CCMS allows for flexible relationship management and auditing. It's designed to handle this. The other two systems are not designed to do it. So if someone tells you that you can use the WebCMS or you can use the DMS because it's good enough, you can tell them that the CCMS is the system that actually has the features for doing this. These other systems will always be a retrofit at best. Okay, so I've got just a couple minutes left. Just wrapping up now. This is a screenshot of the CMS, which is a CCMS. I just wanted to show you can draw different collections based on the type of information that are in them. You've got project management down to on these different collections, and you can see the status. Here I've got a screenshot from SDL TriSoft. I've clicked on a particular module here. I've got a topic. Oh, sorry, module is the same as component. Component module is interchangeable. I've got this DJ game component. I can see that it's on version 2 and the status is draft. And I've popped up this window here called select version. And this is a representation in a table of this table I showed you back here, where you've got multiple potential versions you could be talking about. So if I make a link, or if I'm building a new collection, I want to specify I want version 2 or version 1.1.1, etc. And this version selector allows me to say which version am I talking about in what branch of the version tree. So something that I think is the most recurring misconception with CCMSs, people think that CCMSs are publishing systems because DMSs and WebCMSs are publishing systems. When you have a CCMS, they usually, almost always, do not have a publishing system built in. They are about helping you plan and write, check and manage your components so that you can use them multiple times out to multiple formats. But there's this kind of question mark in the middle. How are you actually going to get from these multi-format components of usually XML content out to these multiple formats? And there has to be something in the middle, some sort of rendering engine that renders the source into some sort of usable output, that makes it into a PDF, that makes it into a mobile website, that makes it into a CD-ROM, etc. So that is a point that you have to consider when you're looking at CCMS, that there has to be something beyond that. And it's usually the case that the same vendor does not supply you all the bits to get your content out there, because people want to use their existing ones or they want to build their own, and so the CCMS vendors just concentrate on the CCMS part of the tool chain. So CCMS very good at complex documents. Tech docs is been where they've grown up, but they're now branching out into other types of content, including complex marketing publishing, legal publishing, and so on. So they're very good at manuals help, web help, also e-learning and training materials coming up a lot. They're good at proposals and requirements as well. So if you have many proposals being written about the same services and products, you want to reuse a lot. Requirements management is something that people want to do, where they want to watch the life of a requirement, either that they've created or an incoming requirement from a regulatory or from a client. And they're the go-to starting point for completely automated publishing and reuse. So if you want to kick off a system which is totally automatic, then having this highly structured, highly typed source material in a management system is the best place to do that. The downside of all this is that by nature they are more complex. They're not traditional publishing. They are very modern publishing, modern systems for driving very modern publishing systems. So they're more complex by nature. So because they're more new and they're more niche, there's not as many reliable open source or very low cost options, but they are coming along for these last couple of years. They need the implementation portion of the puzzle, as I mentioned on the previous slide, and you're going to need some niche skills usually to implement, train, and maintain on these things. So XSLT, DIDA if you're using that, DTDs, XML, whatever. There's many technologies, we can take that offline, that are involved in getting these off the ground. It's getting easier and easier every year, but at the moment this is still kind of cutting edge. Some systems, because of the fact that they've grown up in tech docs, have some usability issues. They're not as pretty, they're not as friendly as your other management systems. Unification. How can we bring our three types of systems into a pleasing enterprise architecture? The three types of management system can share content. You can either do it with an actual program-to-program integration, so programmatically, or manually. We've had projects where we came in and we had the DMS in place, and it handled numbering and it handled formal digital signatures of the release. And we looked at integration, but then we decided, you know what, it's not worth it, because all we're getting is a document number, which has to be put into the CCMS once at the beginning of the project, and then at the end, we just put a PDF into the approval system, and we're done. So spending the time to make these two systems automatically talk to each other wasn't worth it. But what is always key is metadata. So the things that you're going to exchange need to be consistently tagged. The same top-level meta categories allow you to share content. So if in one system you've got your products organized into intermediate users, basic users, and expert users, and you've got 3 product classifications of basic, gold, and platinum, then those categories need to be shared across all the systems in your business, because you want to have a clear source and a clear destination for each piece of content. XML and data can be published out from your CCMS into other formats. So even if these other systems don't understand XML and data natively, you can transform your content into PDF or HTML, and they go on to live a new life downstream. I'm not one who believes that you can create one labeling system and one metadata language for the whole organization and everyone's going to agree on it, etc. That's never going to get done. More realistically, you have to have layers of standardization. So at the bottom layer, you have corporate-wide stuff, terminology. We all say basic, gold, and platinum. We don't say basic, gold, and premium. We all say levers, not switches, and buttons and not doodads. That kind of basic terminology and metadata you want to have global. Legal is often reused globally. Things like disclaimers, you want consistent across all the pieces of the organization. You don't care who published it. If it's got a legal statement on it, it's got to be the right version for the right region, and so on. Things like the logo, used corporate-wide, everyone should share them. Life cycle assets are the next layer on top of that. So some things are relevant internally or prior to the sale. Some things are relevant externally and after the sale. So you reuse them only in those scenarios. Departmentally, you might have certain content and certain assets, certain metadata which are only relevant to support or only relevant to training. And you share within the departments, but not outside the departments. And then you have individual deliverables where you're going to reuse bits of content within particular deliverables or a deliverable. So some standards are company-wide, some are local. No organization I've ever been in can get everyone to agree on corporate standards for everything, and it's not an achievable goal, it's not a positive goal. Having a unified content strategy and enterprise architecture does not mean that everyone does things the same everywhere. There is a kind of a pyramid to this, and you do what makes sense for the business. The way that these systems kind of sit in enterprise systems context is like this. You've got your CCMS on the left, where you're planning and writing components, where you check and reuse and manage in your CCMS, and then when you're ready, you can have those deliverables reviewed and quality checked, translated before they're rendered into the different formats, because it's much cheaper to translate before you actually publish. And then the CCMS publishes out to the DMS and WCMS, which then pass on the multiple formats of content to the audiences that need them. The WebCMS, as we said, is very good at handling analytics and measurement, and so once they've gone out, in comes intelligence, metrics, user contributions, feedback, all that stuff. And the smarter companies are routing that information all the way back into the CCMS so you can see exactly what happened and make strategic decisions the next time you cycle your documents. This is an example of a prototype that we built for a client where we've got some documentation and we socially enabled it so that different silos across the business could come in and discuss component content. So you've got these little numbers here telling you how many comments have come in on a particular component. You've got social features on the actual content itself, saying on a point-by-point basis what's happened and what people want to happen. You can bookmark and download things, and you can see what's happening in your community. So you can see what components you've been looking at, what components your colleagues have been looking at, and so on. But what's also especially interesting is that you can bookmark and download information and then make PDFs to take offline of your bookmarks, or make a Kindle book of the whole publication, and we have, of course, the ability to say also of your bookmarks. So essentially, pushing components out to the publishing layer so that users can build and share their own deliverables for any format. Like more and more, this is what we're seeing requests for. What's called dynamic assembly. Let the users make their own documents and then push them out through the WCMS and feed them into the DMS if needed. This is another example you can just go to yourselves on the Nokia support site for the mobile phones. If you log in and tell Nokia that you've got a Lumia 800, when you search for support and ask a question like, how do I set up email, you can scope your search results across the user guide, the Microsoft knowledge base, FAQs, the forums, and so on. And when you get search results, you'll get the particular components. Here I filtered for user guide from the user guide, and so it says this answer came from the user guide on the search results. And that brings together all sorts of different publishing sources into one unified interface for the client, because all they care about is getting an answer. They don't care about what MS it came from, what department it came from. They just want an answer to their question. So Nokia is, of course, a major data and CCMS user, as well as they're going to be using social discussions and forums, third-party information, and so on. So in conclusion, the different types exist for very different reasons. Previously, we had a lot of IT CIOs and IT departments and vendors pushing this one management system to rule them all kind of scenario. But apples, oranges, and bananas, although they can be compared, they are not the same. So you don't want to end up with an orange pie or a duck a la banane. Most large enterprises today need all three in certain parts of the business. Not everyone will be using all three, but there is a reason to have all three living in tandem. Some vendors, some major organizations are looking to buy up a whole set. So their acquisition strategy is to handle the entire gamut of content. So that's fine. So maybe you can get one vendor, but that still doesn't mean one management system. It means several packages just owned by the same company. There's very few who are still pushing the one system to rule them all approach. It's a kind of a dying breed, and there are more and more compelling examples and case studies showing that these different systems are used across the board by companies in all sorts of industries to handle their different needs across the different parts of the business. So that's about it for me. I now have some time for some Q&A, so I'll let you pick in, Georgina.
Okay, we did have a couple of questions. One of them is, what is the difference between a native XML CCMS and a relational database CCMS. Can a relational DB be XML?
Well, a relational DB can't be an XML database because it's a relational database. However, more and more these days, the difference is going away. There are XML CCMSs that are based on relational databases, and there are XML CCMSs based on native XML databases. There was quite a kind of a fashion for a while to make a very big deal about this, but the fact is relational databases have caught up very well, and you can now do a lot of the things that people want to do. For content, then it doesn't make a lot of difference because human beings are going to be working on objects that are sufficiently large. They're quite small by comparison to documents, but for a database, they're large enough where it doesn't matter what kind of database you're using under the hood. As long as it's a good, scalable, fast database, then either technology is usable. XML native databases, they're good for really data-centric XML. So financial transactions, data mining, where you have a huge amount of XML that's coming in and you have to do a whole bunch of complex manipulations on it. What you can do in a XML database is going to be a little bit more, but that little bit has not proven useful for enough people to make that technology really take off. So we're seeing most of the systems that are coming out perfectly happy on relational databases because relational databases are really getting fast and capable enough to handle it.
Okay, and we have just one more, and it relates back to when you were showing the slide about component-content relationship. Somebody wrote in, it's more of a comment, we found you may need to help to create new style sheets or to make style sheet changes if your template changes or if you need a new template. So basically it's an issue of creating new style sheets with any of the changes you make.
So actually,
yeah, where is that component content relationships? It was about a third of the way through, I think.
Okay, so you're thinking it was
before that, way before that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
This one.
Right.
So
yeah.
Okay. Could you read that comment? Or do you mind
Sure.
reading that one again?
We've found that you may need help going out to the IT. You may need help to create new style sheets or to make style sheet changes.
Right.
Yes, if your template changes or if you need a new template.
Yes. Okay. So yes, I agree with that. And so I talked about it a little bit later. You may need some help if your template changes in some circumstances, but the amount of structural change and the amount of content change you can make without reaching out to IT is much greater than with the other two types of systems. So I guess I could have said it's comparatively much easier to make those changes. I'm not saying that you won't have to get special skills involved, and I said here more complex and requires some niche skills. Those two are true as well. You may find you want to do new things, and often you will find you want to do new things. But if the publishing was set up in a flexible way in the beginning, most organizations can do a lot with their content before they actually need to update templates. It depends, A, how well the templates were originally developed, and B, how drastic the changes are. If you want to define a whole new document type, you want to give it a new cover, things like that, in an automated system, maybe you'll need someone to help you with that. But if you're just changing the arrangement of information, changing nesting, changing linking, you can do all of that within the same old template without having to have an IT person get involved. In a document management system or a web content management system, you need that help even for those kind of changes.
Okay, well, that was it for questions. I want to thank you, Naz, for a terrific presentation, very, very informative. And for everyone listening, I want to thank you for attending. This concludes today's broadcast. You can see the recorded version of the webinar from the DCL archive section on dclab.com. Please join us for future DCL webinars coming up on Thursday, January 17th. We have Joanne Hackus from Comtech Services speaking on abandoning our legacy systems, knowing when we need to change. To those of you familiar with our webinars, you know she's a terrific speaker and really gives a good presentation. So I'm looking forward to that. Hope you are too. Thank you for staying tuned, and we hope to see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.